Oh, say, can you hear?
Yet another red light.
Well, I'm gonna spill all
the secrets you're holding
about the spaceships up there and the aliens down here and all history,
which is totally fake.
Another time actually was on Interstate 81 also, and I had driven from Charleston, West Virginia to Shepherdstown, West Virginia, which is way up in the Panhandle, up close to Washington D.C., Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, and Frederick, Maryland, and right along the Potomac River. It's way up in the corner. And I had left Shepherdstown and gotten on Interstate 81, and normally I would drive south on 81 to where I would hit US Route 60 east and west, and I would turn west and go across the Appalachian Mountains and back to Charleston, West Virginia. And one of these days I was driving back on that route. The last thing I remember, I think, was being in Stanton, Virginia, going south on the highway. I remember going through Manassas, and I believe it was Stanton. And all of a sudden I became aware I was at a stoplight. And I looked around, and I was in a small town that only had one stoplight. And there was a gas station on the corner, and I pulled into this gas station, and I said, can you tell me where Interstate 81 is? And he said, yeah, you go down this road 40 miles or so. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. He said, the way you came out of that intersection, turn around, go back down that road, it's 30, 40 miles, 30, 35 miles back the way you came. And I don't remember getting off the interstate. I don't remember this little town. I don't know how I got to the stoplight. I mean, I was driving a car. I was by myself. And so I got back in the van and drove back to the highway and continued south, uneventful on the rest of the trip. So I have no idea what happened there. Oh, another interesting thing I just realized or remembered. On 2, possibly 3 of the events, another friend of mine that I went to college with was involved. I mean, when I was abducted driving south on Interstate 81 from Martinsburg, West Virginia, between Martinsburg, West Virginia and Lexington, Virginia on Interstate 81, I had just gone to visit a friend of mine named Mark. The time that I was abducted in North Carolina, in Fayetteville, driving from Fayetteville to Greensboro, I had just left that same Mark's house. On the other trip, I was visiting him in college in a dorm in West Virginia, and the other time I was visiting him at his parents' house in South Carolina. And so that's another coincidence I can't really explain. One of the guest speakers from out of town that I got in touch with and had come and talk was Stan Gordon from Pennsylvania. And he does a lot of unusual investigations. Whenever the state police has something that's really strange, they call him, and he usually goes with them to see whatever they've caught him for. And one evening he gets a call from the state police, and they said, we got a real strange one, and we're going to stop by and pick you up. And he says, okay, I'll be ready. And so 15, 20 minutes later, they show up at his house, and this is in rural Pennsylvania, say 45 minutes to an hour outside of Pittsburgh. Pull up to like a farm type area, houses well spread out, not close together at all, maybe a half mile to the next house. And they pull up, and the lady comes to the door, and she said, I had a peeping Tom at the window. I was in the bathroom, and something was staring in the window at me. And they said, well, that's okay. But what's the, and she said, but the window's 15 feet off the ground. And so they said, well, okay, we'll go look. And so Stan and the two cops walk around the corner of the house, and they can see where the bathroom window was that she was speaking of, and it was high up in the air, up off the ground. It wasn't 15 feet, but it was maybe like 8 feet up, so somebody standing that was normal size wouldn't be able to look in unless they had some sort of stepladder or something. And there were no marks on the ground where any type of ladder had been there. There was some trampled dirt in the flower bed going along the edge of the house below the window, where obviously something or somebody had been standing there. And they got down to kind of look at the smashed in area, or the footprints, and they could tell it was giving off a really nasty smell. And at that time they heard a noise farther around the house, around the corner of the house, and so the three of them went on continuing around the farmhouse, and it opened up into an open field directly by the house, as big as a pasture, that had a wooden fence separating two pasture areas going away from the house. And they saw 3 Bigfoot type creatures, probably 6 or 7 feet tall, and they were walking parallel to the fence away from them, so they did not see them. And when they saw it, one of them yelled something and like, holy shit, and the creatures turned and saw them. And at that point, the 2 police officers and Stan stood where they were, and these 3 creatures stood where they were, maybe 100 yards apart. And then the 3 Bigfoot started walking toward them. And then they actually started running toward them. And the 2 cops freaked out. Both of them pulled their guns. One of them immediately unloaded his entire revolver toward the creatures. And as he was shooting the gun, a big beam of light that cast a beam on the ground, maybe 20 or 30 feet in diameter, lit up the pasture close to where these 3 Bigfoot were standing, and they turned and ran toward that lighted circle. And as soon as they passed through the edge of the beam of light and were contained in the circle, they instantly vanished. And then the beam of light vanished upward and was gone, and the 2 cops and the investigator were left standing there by themselves. That's how that event ended. There was no marks on the ground except maybe some slight footprints. It was pretty dry, and the flower bed outside the window had been softer earth, and they did leave some prints, but they were kind of scuffled, and you couldn't even really get a shape out of it. It was just obviously something had been standing there. So they didn't really have any evidence except these 2 state police and a investigator saw this occur. So it evidently actually happened. Here more recently, I have heard from other investigators that the Bigfoot is not indigenous to this planet. It has been here a very, very long time, and it has the ability to blink out of this existence or reality or disappear instantly at any time it wants. It has the ability to move around and not necessarily leave any footprints or indentations on the ground. And so if you're out looking and you find something like that, it's probably being done on purpose. They're evidently very humorous and like to play jokes on us. They are extremely intelligent, have unbelievably complicated mathematical and engineering skills. Obviously, they can actually just blink out and disappear right in front of you, and without any apparent technology in their hand to do it.
Say, can you finally
Start telling us the truth.
Protect our civil liberties and
all war